Legacy media takes a break from its hive mind obsession of Trump this week to investigate a leak effectively proving the Biden regime has been lying about what's really going on in the Russia versus Ukraine conflict. Just kidding. The propaganda parroting puppets in MSM have been more concerned with where the leak came from than the bombshell of lies exposed to rationalize the never-ending Ukraine piggy bank funded by U.S. taxpayers. First, there was the typical go-to Reuters, Russia, likely behind U.S. military document leak, officials say. Russia, Russia, Russia. And the media just continue to parrot this excuse yet again, seeing as U.S. officials have been so trustworthy before. Remember 51 claiming Russia was behind the Hunter Biden laptop, even though the intelligence community already had a copy of Hunter's signed receipt? Once reported that 21-year-old Jack Teixeira is the alleged Pentagon leaker, Bongino points out how the media is treating the leak, attacking the leaker rather than the revelations.
You would think the media would be fascinated. Oh my gosh, guys, you've been lying about Ukraine. No, the media is pushing the Pentagon at this briefing yesterday. Hey, listen, shouldn't we be monitoring what's going on in these chat rooms? Shouldn't we be shutting this information down? This is the Pravda media at its finest right here. It's a little supercut of the questions from the media. They don't want the information. Take a listen yourself.
General Ryder, you say that there are strict protocols in place, and yet a 21-year-old airman was able to access some of the nation's top secrets. How did this happen, and isn't this a massive security breach? What is your message to anyone who might be thinking of leaking these kind of documents in the future?
Can you tell us, are there less people who have access to this type of information today than there were a week ago?
To follow on that, these documents were available long before April 5th and 6th. So what took so long for DOD and the intelligence communities to locate these documents?
As some aptly pointed out, imagine if Woodward and Bernstein had been more obsessed with exposing the leaker, aka Deep Throat in that case, asking U.S. officials about investigating him, rather than what the source was able to reveal. Gateway Pundit reminds readers that 50 years ago, the New York Times and the Washington Post led the way in defying the Nixon administration's effort to quash the publication of the highly classified Pentagon Papers, documents that revealed the U.S. government lied to the American people about Vietnam. And today, those two media outlets enthusiastically helping the U.S. government identify the leaker and smear him in the process. Why weren't so-called journalists more curious about how the alleged leaker was able to access the classified material anyway? Veterans of the CIA are asking that question. What is a young, lowly airman, first class, doing in a skiff with top secret material and no supervision?
Which makes one believe that it was leaked from somewhere within the Pentagon, which this regime will try and cover up, until they depart, because they don't want the American public to know exactly where it came from. This 21-year-old, there is no logical reason why he had access to these documents in the position that he was in.
Before waiting for any other evidence, MSM screams treason, while others see it differently.
He's an American hero. He is an American hero for telling the American public that the government has been lying to it and people are dying as a result of the lying and American dollars are being wasted as a result of the lying.
Presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy says the most damning part of the leak isn't the leak. It's the fact that our government lied to the American people about Zelensky and the fact that there are apparently U.S. boots on the ground in Ukraine. In other news, the New York Times still believes it's above making a proper retraction. When called out for lies, it just stealth edits. Summit News diplomatic correspondent Michael Crawley, for 12 hours, despite undergoing a full editorial process, contained major fabrications about whistleblower Edward Snowden, who in 2013 exposed vast domestic and international spying operations run by the NSA and other organizations. Glenn Greenwald, who actually knows the details probably more than anyone, calls them out, then notes NYT silently deleted its false statements from the article without bothering to add a correction, an editor's note, or any other indication that this happened. New York Times also pulls out one of its now overused arrogant catchphrases in this tweet. Ron DeSantis, eyeing 2024, has taken to bashing the Federal Reserve. He has criticized its chair and alleged, without evidence, that the White House wants to create a central bank digital currency to surveil Americans. So it's now bashing to be critical. And how about instead of the news continuing to gaslight you with phrases like without evidence, they actually bring their own evidence to refute? Kyle Becker notes, the Federal Reserve has announced its first big step toward a digital dollar by unveiling the FedNow service. It's an instant payment service set to roll out in July. And to wrap up, journalists never bringing their own evidence behind accusations. Here's Elon Musk destroying a BBC reporter.
What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
is that what I'm asking for? One example,
right?
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying,
then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet, and yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well,
that's false.
No, what I claimed...
You just lied.
What I claimed was there are many organizations that say that that kind of information is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my feed or not... I mean, right, and
literally
you can look at something
one.
like the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK. They will say that. So
look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
Right.
Musk also called out NPR and PBS for leaving Twitter, tweeting, "Publicly funded PBS joins publicly funded NPR in leaving Twitter in a huff after being labeled publicly funded." NPR apologists say, oh, but it's just been an eensy-weensy, tiny, wee little bit of federal funding. Well, then why not go ahead and defund them? They won't miss it, right? Bringing you what's ignored, sensationalized, misleading, or just plain false. That's your Media Malfeasance Roundup. Stay in touch. Join me on ChristyLeeTV.locals.com. For KLIM.news, I'm Christy Lee.